Hello, welcome to Book Journey. Today, I'm going to interpret for you the book of Sugar and Snow, A History of Ice Cream Making by American food writer Jerry Quincio, subtitled The 500 Years of Our Encounter with Ice Cream. From the title alone, you might already know that this is a culinary research work on the history of ice cream. The author, Quincio, affectionately mentions in the preface that when people learned she was writing a book about ice cream, their faces would light up with smiles. For many, ice cream is a part of cherished childhood memories, whether it's the jingle of the ice cream truck or the sweet and cool sensation of receiving a popsicle from one's parents on a hot summer day. Today, ice cream is a widely popular cold dessert, with global consumers spending a staggering $60 billion annually on it. However, what many don't know is that until the late 19th century, the ice cream we can casually purchase and enjoy today was actually an expensive luxury. It was not until the mid to late 19th century, after the two industrial revolutions, that it gradually became a common daily consumer product. In fact, Quincio's purpose in writing this book is to trace back through the small example of ice cream how social, economic, and technological revolutions have impacted human daily life. So, many people wonder, how exactly was this wonderful cold drink born? Quincio's research indicates that the origins of ice cream have long been shrouded in the mysterious mists of history, giving rise to many outlandish and even absurd legends. For instance, some unofficial histories claim that the notorious Roman tyrant Nero invented ice cream, allegedly mixing honey with crushed ice to quench his thirst. Others assert that the famous Italian traveler and writer Marco Polo brought this magical dessert back from the Far East. There are also researchers who say that in the 16th century, the magical ice cream followed the Florentine noblewoman Catherine de' Medici, who married into the French royal family, and subsequently became popular in Europe. Of course, the only element in these stories that aligns with historical reality is that the prototype of ice cream indeed originated in Italy. So, let's follow Quincio's narrative on a culinary journey through time to trace the past and present of ice cream. First, let's look at how, before the Industrial Revolution, ice cream as a rare delicacy on the dining table came into being and was improved and passed down by generations of chefs. In the following second part, we will move to the tumultuous era of the Industrial Revolution to review how ice cream entered thousands of households and became a beloved daily consumer product. Finally, I will offer you an informational bonus based on the content of this book and other scientific health studies, with the aim of reminding everyone that although ice cream is sweet and pleasant, its unique ingredients can cause some health problems that should not be ignored when consumed in excess. Let's rewind time to 17th century Italy. Although the Mediterranean had gradually lost its central position in global trade routes, the opulence and comfort of life in the Italian city-states remained the envy and model for the rest of Europe. Due to the hot climate of the Mediterranean region, during the peak of summer, various chilled drinks and desserts became the most popular foods on the tables of Italian nobility and the wealthy, ranging from iced fruit juices and wines to cream puddings and so on. By the mid-17th century, the earliest recipe for the prototype of modern ice cream was born in history, and its inventor was a renowned Neapolitan chef named Latini. Latini came from a poor background but was diligent and intelligent. While learning to cook, he also learned to read and write. With his superb culinary skills and a bit of cleverness, he first became the chef and steward of Cardinal Barberini in Rome, and then went to Naples to serve in the household of the noble Sarsfield, where he developed a frozen dessert called milk ice. So, how was this cutting-edge dessert of the time made? Latini's method was to mix half a liter of milk with half a liter of water, add 3 pounds of sugar, and 6 ounces of chopped candied lemon, and then quickly place the bottles containing these mixed ingredients into an ice bucket. The so-called ice bucket was actually a large container filled with a mixture of ice and salt. Compared to pure ice or ice water, the ice-salt mixture could not only maintain a low temperature for a long time, but also quickly absorb heat in a short period. This wonderful chemical reaction turned the ingredients in the jar into a frozen dessert with a texture somewhere between today's ice cream and custard pudding. However, Quincio specifically reminds us that perhaps Latini was not the inventor of ice cream, but rather because he was one of the few renowned chefs of that era who had both achieved fame and left recipes for posterity. The crown of being the inventor or progenitor of ice cream fortuitously landed on his head. After its birth, ice cream quickly spread to various European countries and was improved by local chefs and pastry chefs. By the way, the English term for ice cream was born in 1671. King Charles II of England held a grand banquet at Windsor Castle. At the banquet, this fashionable and expensive dessert from Italy was solemnly presented to the king. The continuous improvement of the flavor and texture of ice cream is also thanks to several key ingredients for making modern ice cream, which appeared on the dining table with the advancement of human industrial technology and the exploration of the great geographical discoveries. First, there is sugar. Don't underestimate this common seasoning in ordinary people's kitchens today. Until the first half of the 17th century, sugar was still an expensive luxury in Europe, and only a few wealthy classes could enjoy sweets such as cakes, pastries, candies, and candied fruits. However, with the European colonization of the American continent, sugarcane plantations were rapidly established on the Caribbean islands. The local specialty plant, sugarcane, was first processed into coarse brown sugar locally, and then shipped across the ocean to the refineries in various European countries, where it was processed into bright, granular white sugar. Thanks to the abundant supply and low price of American sugarcane sugar, the consumption of white sugar in Europe soared and its price fell, making it an ordinary ingredient and seasoning affordable for the common people. How important is sugar to ice cream? For example, in 1768, a famous French chef named Amy said in his recipe that the quality of sugar is crucial to the taste of ice cream. If the sugar is not pure enough, not only will the sweetness of the ice cream be insufficient, but it will also not dissolve completely when mixed with other ingredients and water, resulting in gritty impurities in the ice cream, which greatly affects the texture. In fact, before the large-scale supply of pure and cheap white sugar, chefs had to add an extra step to purify the sugar when making ice cream, such as adding egg whites to the sugar water, boiling it, then skimming off the floating impurities on the surface, and filtering it with gauze, which was very troublesome. Secondly, there is vanilla, which is well known for giving ice cream and other sweets a rich and sweet unique aroma. As early as the 16th century, vanilla had come to Europe from what is now Mexico in Central America through the Atlantic trade route. However, it was not until the 19th century that vanilla was able to be grown on a large scale due to the development of artificial pollination. Other ingredients from the Americas and Africa, such as cocoa beans and coffee beans, were also added to ice cream by creative chefs, making the flavors of this fashionable dessert more diversified. To make their creations more visually appealing, pastry chefs also came up with various ingenious methods, for example, when freezing, pouring the ice cream batter into molds of various shapes to give them different appearances. In addition, newly invented food coloring was put to use, such as carmine red, extracted from an insect called cochineal, and lemon yellow, from saffron and gamboge. Pastry chefs would mix these pigments with sugar syrup in a certain proportion, like painters mixing colors, and then gently brush them onto the surface of the ice cream. It is said that some skilled pastry chefs could make ice cream that looked exactly like a freshly picked peach, and it was only when the diners tasted it that they realized the truth. With the growing popularity of ice cream, many traditional taverns, cafes, and restaurants across Europe began to add ice cream to their menus to attract female customers and even children. For example, Tortoni's Café in Paris was the preferred gathering place for the Parisian upper class after Napoleon's coronation. The regulars here were almost like a who's who of France's political, cultural, and artistic circles at the time, including Foreign Minister Talleyrand, the famous poet Baudelaire, painter Manet, composer Rossini, and the writer Balzac, among others. After 11 o'clock every night, Tortoni's Café began to serve various desserts. Fashionable Parisian wealthy people would even leave the opera early and rush over by carriage to secure a table. In Balzac's series of novels The Human Comedy, specifically in The Rise and Fall of the Courtesans, Balzac recorded the ice cream served at Tortoni's Café with various shapes, placed in exquisite crystal glass cups, and topped with a variety of candied fruits, crushed macaron biscuits, and various nuts. From the 17th to the 18th century, although the production techniques, flavors, and shapes of ice cream were constantly evolving, the people who could enjoy it were still a minority. Why was that? There were many bottlenecks, and the first one was the most basic ingredient in the production process, ice, which could not be mass-produced artificially. This meant that the supply of ice cream could never surge, and its price remained high. Until the mid-19th century, the method humans used to make ice was not much different from that of thousands of years ago. In the cold winter, natural ice blocks were collected from nature, cut, and then stored in a cool and ventilated storage room, the icehouse, to be enjoyed in the summer. To prevent the precious ice blocks stored in the icehouse from melting as much as possible, engineers came up with many ideas. For example, the icehouse had to be painted white to reflect sunlight as much as possible. The floor of the icehouse was also covered with a thick layer of sawdust or straw mats to enhance insulation. In addition, the occurrence of the Second Industrial Revolution allowed humans to master another relatively efficient and clean energy source, electricity. As a result, various electrically driven mechanical devices were also put into economic production. Eventually, various electrically driven cooling devices, such as refrigerators and ice-making machines, were introduced in the second half of the 19th century. These efficient cooling devices enabled the first large commercial ice houses for mining and storing natural ice blocks to appear in the United States, with a capacity of tens of thousands of tons. Although at the beginning of its invention, the overly expensive electric ice-making equipment made the price of artificial ice higher than that of natural ice. With the decline in the price of chemical additives and concerns about health and safety issues, artificial ice gradually became the mainstream in the market. According to the author's statistics, by 1920, the United States produced 40 million tons of artificial ice in a year, while the production of natural ice was only about 15 million tons. In this way, ice, which was once expensive and in short supply, gradually became an everyday ingredient that the ordinary working class could afford. With the basic ingredient, ice, solved, the next challenge to tackle was the production process. As we know from the previous narrative, in the pre-industrial era, ice cream making was a highly skilled craft, especially the stirring of ice cream ingredients. Only a few master chefs or pastry chefs, through long and arduous training, could produce ice cream with both excellent taste and texture. But in the industrial age, due to the widespread application of machinery, a hand-cranked ice cream maker was born in Philadelphia, USA, in 1848. The inventor was a female inventor named Nancy Johnson. With it, even ordinary housewives or small vendors without professional training could stir up perfectly uniform ice cream batter and make top-notch ice cream. Soon, everyone felt that cranking for half an hour to 40 minutes at a time was too tiring and laborious. Therefore, at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, electrically driven ice cream makers were also born. Cheap raw materials plus efficient manufacturing machines laid the foundation for large-scale factory-intensive production. At that time, in the American city of Baltimore, there was an American dairy producer named Fussell, who first saw the business opportunity. In the hot summer, fresh milk was difficult to store for a long time. At that time, the purchasing power of consumers in Baltimore had already reached saturation. Every day, there was a considerable amount of fresh milk that could not be sold. Instead of throwing them away, why not use them to make ice cream? So he had a brainwave, bought a batch of large ice cream making machines, and opened his own ice cream factory. The large production scale effectively reduced costs. In small ice cream shops, the price of a kilogram of ice cream was about 60 cents, while Fussell's company's product was less than half of this standard. In just a few years, this production model was quickly popularized in Europe. Those once high-end, expensive ice cream cafes and dessert shops gradually faded into history, replaced by countless cheap ice cream sales points in grocery stores and corner shops, and ice cream vendors pushing carts on the streets of London. A 2-inch square, half-inch thick ice cream brick wrapped in cheap paper was sold for only 1 penny. Another contribution of the United States to ice cream is the familiar cone ice cream that we all know today. The cone, which serves as the container for ice cream, is actually a thin wafer made from flour, sugar, and butter, and comes in various shapes, including the cone shape. This baked, crispy wafer is also known as a waffle. In the Middle Ages, the Christian Church used waffles to distribute communion to believers during church ceremonies. There are basically 2 versions of the story of the birth of cone ice cream, but the background of both stories is the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair. The first version is that a waffle vendor named Homwe, seeing that the neighboring stall had too many customers and the stall owner did not have enough containers to hold the ice cream being sold, had a brainwave and suggested that he put the ice cream in his conical waffle tube and sell it at a higher price. The second version is that another waffle vendor at the fair, named Dumas, came up with this new dessert recipe. The last invention that promoted more consumption of ice cream by the general public was the home refrigerator. After all, ice cream melts easily. If you buy too much and can't eat it all at once, it basically can't be stored. This made early consumers basically buy just enough for one serving. By the mid to late 19th century, more and more people in American and European households were buying a primitive refrigerator called an icebox to preserve fresh food. An icebox is a metal box with a door, with space at the bottom and top to place ice blocks to cool the food. The surface of the food shelf in the middle is also covered with a zinc coating that can insulate heat. To prevent the ice from melting too quickly, the icebox is also filled with sawdust or wood shavings. Of course, for meat and vegetables, this icebox was still useful in the summer, but it could not produce enough low temperature to prevent ice cream from melting. Some may ask, at that time, didn't ice cream factories and large ice factories already use electric refrigerators? Why didn't ordinary people buy a refrigerator? First, due to technical limitations at the time, the refrigeration compressor was too large and expensive, which made large refrigerators unaffordable for ordinary people. Second, the refrigerants at the time were mainly gases such as ammonia or sulfur dioxide, which were not only flammable and explosive, but also harmful to the human body. In the spacious factory cold storage, occasional leaks or explosions caused limited damage, but for the cramped family kitchen, this meant great risk. It was not until the 1920s that more compact small air compressors and non-toxic, non-flammable refrigerant gases such as Freon were born, making the birth of the home refrigerator possible. With the refrigerator as a good storage helper, consumers could buy more cost-effective large packages of ice cream and enjoy them at home slowly, which further increased the sales of ice cream. According to statistics, by 1914, the United States alone produced more than 70 million gallons of ice cream in a year, about 260,000 tons. In summary, by the 1920s, ice cream had become a popular global summer cold food, inexpensive and loved by consumers of all ages. According to statistics, in today's United States, the per capita annual consumption of ice cream is more than 20 kilograms. However, with the increase in ice cream consumption, health problems caused by it have gradually begun to cause concern. First, there are food processing and safety hazards. From the late 19th century to the early 20th century, due to the lack of food public health supervision and management agencies and necessary disinfection and treatment technologies, dairy products became a hotspot for frequent food safety accidents. For example, the processing workshops of many dairy product companies had poor sanitary conditions. In order to effectively reduce costs, some dairy product companies would purchase milk from sick cows as food ingredients. These milks often contained large amounts of various streptococci, as well as tuberculosis and diphtheria bacilli and other pathogens. This led to the fact that every hot season when ice cream was popular, it was also the peak time for the large-scale outbreak of various epidemics and the overcrowding of public medical institutions. Therefore, governments around the world began to deliberate on regulating food safety issues through legislation. For example, in 1906, the U.S. Congress passed the Pure Food and Drug Act. In addition, a female bacteriology researcher named Pennington was commissioned by the Philadelphia municipal government to conduct a safety investigation and research on the dairy industry in the Philadelphia area, starting in 1908. Under Pennington's recommendation, the Philadelphia municipal government introduced a special bill for dairy hygiene, stipulating that enterprises and health authorities must regularly conduct sample surveys of dairy farmers to check the safety of milk. Sources: in the production of dairy products, the pasteurization method must be used to treat raw materials, and so on. Soon, Philadelphia's set of regulations for dairy production hygiene was imitated and adopted by other state governments. In 1958, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, introduced a new regulation that strictly limited the composition of ice cream products. For example, the milk fat content of all ice cream must be at least 10%. Each gallon of ice cream must contain more than 1.6 pounds of solid matter, and cream cannot be replaced by excessive water. If it is flavored ice cream, it must ensure the use of natural fruit flavorings, and the artificial colorants added for coloring must also be indicated on the packaging. In addition, to ensure consumer health, the regulations also stipulated that the coagulants used in the production of ice cream were strictly limited to edible gelatin, guar gum, and several others. Some emulsifiers commonly used in the past to make ice cream smoother were strictly banned because animal experiments showed that long-term and large intake of these components could lead to diarrhea, kidney stones, and other diseases. However, it should be noted that even if the quality and hygiene standards are met, ice cream is not considered a healthy snack. In the early years, when ice cream gradually became a mass consumer product, such as at the end of the 19th century, some people were worried that the sweet and cool ice cream was actually harmful to the body. For example, many ordinary workers in European cities, due to their busy work and lack of time to cook, would casually give their children some money to buy ice cream as a meal, resulting in children suffering from various diseases, including tooth decay. Specifically, the seemingly cold and sweet ice cream is actually a formidable calorie killer. Its sugar content is often more than 15%, at least 50% higher than many sweet soft drinks. This is the #1 culprit for causing health problems such as tooth decay, obesity, and elevated uric acid. In addition, the higher the quality and the softer and richer the texture of the ice cream, the higher the fat content. For example, the fat content of Haagen-Dazs ice cream is more than 17%. While you are feeling cool, you are actually continuously feeding excessive cholesterol and saturated fat into your body. Moreover, due to the advancement of food chemical technology, many manufacturers choose to add artificial cream, that is, hydrogenated vegetable oil, when making ice cream. This ingredient is rich in trans fatty acids. Trans fatty acids are closely related to various heart diseases and are also an important cause of obesity. Not only that, but long-term intake of high sugar, high-fat foods such as ice cream can also lead to addictive behavior, that is, the continuous reduction of hormones such as dopamine secreted by the brain's reward area makes the eater unconsciously choose to eat more in order to reach the previous secretion level and feel the same pleasure. Finally, let's talk about a disease related to ice cream that is not serious but very common, namely ice cream headache, also known as brain freeze. The specific symptom is that when you greedily eat ice cream for the coolness, you will feel a sudden severe headache. The pathogenesis of this disease is not complicated. When ice cream and other cold foods reach the top of our mouth or the back of the throat, it causes small blood vessels to contract and expand rapidly. The pain sensors near these blood vessels feel discomfort and send an alarm signal to the human body's perception command center, that is, the brain. In a hurry, the brain mistakenly believes that the discomfort occurs in the head, so we who are swallowing cold food or drinks will feel a sudden headache. Another medical explanation is that cold drinks and foods cause the blood vessels near the upper palate to contract, slowing the flow of blood to the brain. The pressure sensors near the blood vessels immediately inform the brain of this change. In order to ensure that the brain, the perception command center, has a sufficient blood supply, the heart increases the blood supply to the brain. As a result, the expanded blood vessels press against the nerves near the brain, causing a headache. So, how can we prevent and treat ice cream headache? It's simple. If the headache has already occurred, you can repeatedly massage the painful area with your hand. At the same time, you can roll up your tongue to press against the upper palate of your mouth, or cover your mouth and nose with your hand and breathe quickly. These can effectively relieve the pain. Of course, if you have a history of high blood pressure or heart disease, you should try to eat less and not eat ice cream too quickly or swallow it in large bites, as this may cause blood pressure fluctuations or even angina and other diseases that endanger life safety. Alright, that's it for the main content of Sugar and Snow. In this book, the author Quincio uses her years of research on human dietary history to tell us how, over the past 500 years, ice cream has evolved from an expensive, niche European luxury food to a popular, inexpensive summer cold drink favored globally. Observing history through food has the advantage of being intuitive and relatable, allowing us to see the bigger picture through small details. A simple ice cream reflects how, over the past 500 years, human life has benefited from the progress of economic production and scientific technology, moving towards prosperity and abundance. Ingredients for making ice cream, such as sugar, dairy products, and ice, were all in short supply and limited in production in the pre-industrial era when large-scale manufacturing and extraction technologies were lacking. However, the age of exploration and the scientific revolution changed all that. First, the abundant sugarcane in the Caribbean region of the Americas, and then the beet in Europe, provided humans with cheap and high-quality sugar, followed by ingredients from the Americas and Africa, such as vanilla, coffee, and cocoa, which offered a variety of rich and tempting flavors for ice cream. After the 19th century, the birth of the Industrial Revolution gave humans a series of new energy sources, from coal to electricity, as well as mechanical productivity. Electrically driven machinery, from ice-making machines to dairy product assembly line factories and cold chain logistics systems, completely broke through the natural limitations on the cost, production, and storage of ice cream ingredients, turning it into a popular leisure cold drink for the masses. Quincio concludes that by the mid-20th century, ice cream, which had become a global sensation, had taken on more significance and even become a symbol of a good and stable life. For example, after the outbreak of World War II, the U.S. government declared a wartime economic system. But on the other hand, in order to stabilize public sentiment and encourage people to maintain production and enlist in the military, ice cream was listed as one of the 7 daily foods guaranteed to be supplied. The restrictions on ice cream production were limited to slightly reducing the butterfat content in the product and prohibiting manufacturers from developing too many flavors of ice cream. For U.S. soldiers on the Pacific and European battlefields, ice cream, like tobacco and Coca-Cola, was a consumer product that could greatly boost morale, with each person receiving a monthly quota of 2.5 liters of ice cream. Moreover, with the popularity of mass entertainment culture and commercial advertising, ice cream also became a food closely associated with teenage trends and romantic love. For example, Audrey Hepburn's performance in the movie Roman Holiday made Italian handmade gelato and the Spanish Steps a must-see check-in item for tourists visiting Rome. However, as human living standards have improved and medical technology has advanced, the long-term health risks of consuming large amounts of ice cream have gradually become known to us, including various health problems such as obesity, cardiovascular diseases, and gastrointestinal issues. So, although the sweet and tempting ice cream is delicious, it should not be consumed without restraint.